Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, vino en el cielo y en la estrellería, vi ídolo santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham vino. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer entera no penada, día en día ella preguntaba, ¿qué tiene la cara tan demonada? Ella ya sabía, el bien que tenía. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Al fin los 9 meses Padre quería, iba caminando por campos en viñas, y a su marido no le descubría, topó una mara y parería. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי, עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא ישן שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שומר ישראל, השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות ישראל. עזרי השם עושה שמיים וארץ, אני אתן לבות רגליך, על ינום שומרך. אוי 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 אוי, שיר למעלות שא עיניי אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. And we have, as usual, I hope what will be an interesting and exciting Torah study ahead. So we're going to conclude today the book of Zefaniah, and then we will continue. And then we will continue in Numbers, chapter 2, which is the arrangement of the tribes around the camp, around the Mishkan, around the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and we'll continue on in Numbers, in the book of Numbers, which we started a couple of weeks ago. So let's see. I did want to present today an interesting, let's say, refutation of rabbinical ideas. So the rabbis use a number of verses in the Tanakh to try to, quote unquote, prove that that lineage is matrilineal rather than patrilineal. Now we all know with a study of history that it was the rabbis, when they rose to power, who switched over from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent. They followed the Romans. A good friend of mine, I think I can now call him a good friend of mine, wrote his doctoral thesis on the influence, we could say in general, the influence of Greco-Roman culture on the Jews of that time. That's when the rabbis were rising to power, and there were certain laws within Roman within the Roman Empire, which followed matrilineal descent rather than patrilineal descent. Specifically, if someone was, and please don't quote me 100% on this, I'd have to go look it up, or you'd have to ask him, but I believe I'm restating this accurately. If not, then it's not too far off. So if someone was not a Roman citizen, then their lineage was determined by the mother rather than the father. Again, don't quote me 100% on this. I have to go look up the details. It's been a month or two since I looked it up, but that is more or less the correct details. So the switch over from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent was under the influence of the Romans, and it was under the influence of the rabbis wanting to create a new religion. As I always like to say, Rabbinical Judaism was the first Reformed Judaism, and I mean that as a quip, but there's a lot of truth to it. It is not the Torah, as I say every week. Rabbinical Jews do not follow the covenant of the Torah. They follow a tiny little thread that grew out of control, like a virus or like a disease, in post-exile Judea. Remember, all of the rest of the tribes, the northern kingdom, had already been destroyed by and exiled by the Syrians in 722 BCE. So after 722 BCE, all that remained was the southern kingdom, also known as Judea. And then, of course, they were exiled by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. The Babylonians were conquered by the Medians within a couple of decades, and then the Persians, who were also a Western Iranian tribe, rose to power, essentially usurped the Medians, and the Persians became, within a period of 50 years, became the owners of the entire formerly Neo-Babylonian kingdom. That was when you had Cyrus Koresh, who, by the way, is called Mashiach Yahweh, the anointed one, or the Messiah of Yahweh, for all you Christians out there. At any rate, I digress, as I sometimes tend to do. The point being that out of this exilic period, so the Persians were, to make a long story very short, were conquered by the Greeks. Alexander the Great conquered the entire, Middle East and beyond in 332 and thereabouts. I think Israel was conquered in exactly 332 BCE, and that introduced Hellenistic culture into the wider region. Then when the Seleucids took over, then Alexander the Great died. His kingdom was broken up was distributed among the generals. Israel was run by the Ptolemies, the Ptolemaic kingdom, and that was taken over by the Seleucids in around 200 BCE, and the Seleucids began a very aggressive campaign of Hellenization, and that's exactly the period that the rabbis began to rise to power. So their influence was Hellenism, and the second branch, there were already well-established communities in the exile in former Babylon, which was now part of the Greece, or the Greek derivative kingdoms. I believe it was ruled also by the Seleucids, if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, so the Babylonians the Jews living in Babylonia also started becoming heavily influenced by Babylonian, Persian, and then Hellenistic culture. And this is the milieu, it's not fancy, but that's the right word. This is the atmosphere in which Rabbinical Judaism arose. So Rabbinical Judaism is a Greco-Roman derivative reform Judaism. It's a derivative religion of Torah. As I always say, it is not Torah, just as Islam is not Torah, and just as Christianity is not Torah. In fact, there's one guy I watch who I'm not a very big fan of his, but I watch him because he's interesting, and sometimes he makes some interesting points. And one of the things he points out is that Rabbinical Judaism, and I think he states more along the lines of rabbinical Judaism was influenced by Christianity rather than the other way around. I'm not sure if I would go that far, but they both grew out of that same atmosphere, that same Greco-Roman, that Greece/Roman controlled Israel, Middle East, Babylon, Persia. The whole Middle East was controlled by Greece, and then later on, the Romans. Israel fell under Roman control in 63 BCE when the Pharisees invited the Romans in to take over the place. Shows where their hearts were. Those same Romans, then 130 years later, destroyed the Second Temple with, I believe, the tacit approval, or the tacit stamp of approval from the Pharisees, which at that point could already probably be called the rabbis. Maybe the cutoff was after the destruction of the Second Temple. At any rate, my point is that what you are seeing when you look at rabbinical Jews is you're seeing Greco-Roman Jews. That's why I always like to make fun of them. I don't make fun of them for the sake of making fun of them. I actually make fun of them to kind of wake people up, including themselves. I'll give them Roman names. So if I know a rabbinical Jew named, or a rabbi named, I'll just make up a name. Rabbi Levi, Rabbi David Levi. I'm just making up a name. I'll call him Rabbi Davidis Leviticus or something like that, to show that really he's just a Roman citizen, just as the Catholic Church, is the last vestige, very powerful, but last vestige of Rome. So the Roman Empire still exists today in a certain sense, and all those that are under the control of the Catholic Church are in a sense Roman citizens, not literally, but in a certain cultural sense and religious sense. So rabbinical Jews are also Roman citizens. They're essentially Greco-Roman Jews. And in their stubbornness, remember Leviticus chapter 26:40, you shall admit the sins of your fathers and repent of those sins and return to Yahweh, your God, paraphrasing. But so the rabbinical Jews are still living in the stubbornness of the exile. You would call him Davidikus Schmuckus. I like that. That works. How about Davidikus Schmuckulus or something like that? At any rate, so remember that thank God, rabbinical Judaism is dying. It is dying, as I say again very frequently. Follow the trend line 300 years ago, close to 100% of Jews were observant rabbinical Jews, Orthodox Jews. Now it's down to around 10 to 15%, and the numbers are falling. And I believe that many things will happen. It's my personal opinion. I don't claim to be a prophet. A famous rabbi used to say, I'm not a prophet, I'm a loss, but I certainly don't claim to be a prophet. But I do predict that within a generation, rabbinical Judaism will completely cease to exist, thank God. As the Geula, as the redemption, as the return to the land of Israel continues, then rabbinical Judaism, which is a vestige which was born of exile, and died as the exile ended, will continue, follow the trend line, continue to die, or continue its death throes, and that's what it's in right now. It's in its death throes, and will eventually just bloop, disappear, like Pac-Man, gone within a generation, if not less. I think many things will happen in the world and within the nation of Israel, which will accelerate that, and it might be a lot less than a generation, but certainly within a generation, I think will be gone. It has no place. It cannot coexist with the Geula. It cannot coexist with the redemption. It cannot coexist with the return of the people of Israel to the land of Israel. Thank God I live here in the land of Israel, in the Golan Heights. Love it here. It's the most beautiful part of Israel, in my opinion. I have beautiful views of the Sea of Galilee from up on the heights here, and the nature here is just incredible, especially in the wintertime and the early spring and the spring. At any rate, hold on, some noise outside. Let's wait for it to dissipate. At any rate, so rabbinical Judaism cannot coexist with the redemption, with the return of the people of Israel to the land of Israel. I feel very sorry for the Jews especially in the United States, who are still stuck there and stuck in their rabbinical Judaism. Again, look what's happening in the United States. The Jews are becoming more and more despised. They're becoming more and more reviled. They're becoming more and more rejected. And if you subtract 100 years, it's uncanny how many of the same things were happening in Germany in the 1920s as the Weimar Republic continued to rule over Germany, a very liberal, weak, kind of left-wing government. And this, of course, just led to ultimately backlash. And that backlash was the Nazi Party rising to power. So I see very similar trends in the United States right now. Of course, Donald Trump is not exactly a leftist, but there are leftists swarming around all over the place. And of course, we know the one thing that the leftists and the right wing can agree on is their hatred of Israel and their hatred of the Jews in the United States. So it does not bode well for the Jews. I did a video about a half a year ago when I was back in the United States. I spent about close to a year back in the US visiting family and dealing with some family issues. And I did a video, the Jews have 10 years max left in the United States, and I still hold by that. It's going to get very bad there. And so that will be the end of rabbinical Judaism in the United States. And I don't know how many people are going to physically make it out of the United States, just like not too many made it out of Europe in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. So I see incredible parallels between the situation in Europe 100 years ago and the situation in the United States now. As I always like to say, the United States, outside of Israel, the United States is the last large population of Jews in the world. So the United States has around 6 million Jews. Number 2 after that is anybody? France, with about 400,000 Jews. That's it. And it goes downhill from there. So the last large population of Jews outside of the US is the United States. I, of course, grew up in the United States in New York City, in Queens. And, you know, there was no shortage of Jews where I grew up. Let's put it that way. So that will be the end of rabbinical Judaism one way or another in the United States. And so whatever remains in Israel, also parents are struggling. They're desperate to try to hold, by hook or by crook, hold their children into rabbinical Judaism. Many of the children, including those who are born into Karaite, ultra-Orthodox families, want nothing to do with that form of Judaism and are branching out and exploring their own ways and their own directions. And the parents are in a frenzy trying to prevent that from happening, but it's a losing cause. Rabbinical Judaism is on its deathbed. It's in its death throes, and it will not last more than another generation. So, and that's, of course, from our point of view, that's wonderful. From the Karaite, Neo-Karaite / Choserim B'Tanach, that's what I like to call our movement, Choserim B'Tanach. If you understand Hebrew, you know exactly the implications of such a phrase, what it means in the cultural aspect of modern Israel. So our Choserim B'Tanach, the Return to Tanakh movement, is growing. It's growing exponentially. There are some wonderful purveyors of this truer form. I won't say true because, you know, I'm not going to claim that everything I say and do and know is 100% in line with Torah. We've been so distanced from our God, Yahweh, and from our land for so long that who knows, maybe I'm sure there are many things that I have to learn, but I would call it a much more true form of Torah. And this is what is rising exponentially. So, right. So originally what I was talking about is the rabbinical switchover from patrilineal to matrilineal descent. Many well-known medieval Karaite commentators, scholars have pointed out how the rabbis deliberately, or maybe they didn't use the word deliberately, but I think they imply at least deliberately. I would say deliberately. I would say the rabbis deliberately destroyed the kahuna, the priesthood, in order to take power over Israel. They deliberately aided the Romans in the destruction, or did not resist the Romans in the destruction of the Second Temple. They cry crocodile tears every Tisha B'Av over the destruction of the Second Temple, but I believe they wanted the Second Temple destroyed because that would be the end of the priesthood. They switched holidays. They switched 180 degrees across the calendar, the meaning of the new year. The new year is the first day of the first month in the springtime, the month of the Aviv. They switched it to the first day of the seventh month, and they have their fake, false, invented holiday of Rosh Hashanah coming up in less than a month. We celebrate it, of course, as the first day of the seventh biblical month, Yom Teruah. Has nothing to do with the new year. They switched from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent. So they did things that were 180 degrees on purpose. Dafka, as we like to say in modern Hebrew. It's actually an Aramaic word, Talmudic word, but it doesn't matter. It's in modern Hebrew. They deliberately did it, just as, again, medieval Karaite commentators, including Daniel Kumisi, points out that just as King Yerovam ben Navat, the first king of, after the kingdom split, after the death of Solomon, the first king of the northern kingdom, one of his first acts, or one of the first acts he did recorded in the Tanakh, was to set up alternative places of worship. Instead of Jerusalem, he set up two places of worship, one in Bethel and one in Dan, not far from me, and I visited Tel Dan and did a video on it. Look it up on the channel. And so, and the other thing he did, Yerovam ben Navat did, was he made an alternate holiday, just like the rabbis have done, making a new holiday in imitation of Sukkot that instead of falling, falling on the 15th day of the seventh month, was a a 7-day holiday falling on the beginning on the 15th day of the 8th month. So he did exactly what the rabbis did. He made up new holidays, just as the rabbis changed the new year from the first of the first month to the first of the seventh month. They completely disregard the true meaning of Chag HaShavuot, the Festival of Weeks, and make up a new fake holiday called Chag Matan Torah, based on complete speculation that the Shavuot falls on the same day that the Torah, the Ten Commandments, were given on Mount Sinai. There's absolutely no proof of that whatsoever. So the rabbis are, according to Daniel Kumisi, I believe it was Kumisi, and other medieval Karaite commentators, the rabbinites, the rabbis fall, they follow in the footsteps of Yerovam ben Navat, the first king of northern Israel. And of course, one of the things they did was switch over from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent. I believe just as they deliberately destroyed the priesthood, just as they deliberately, or at least tacitly, acquiesced to the Romans' destruction of the Second Temple, because that helped them gain power. The Pharisees were essentially aligned with the Romans. The Pharisees invited the Romans in 63 BCE, destroying, ending the Hasmonean kingdom, which had existed since around 165 BCE. That's the Hanukkah story. So just as they deliberately did all that, so they deliberately wanted to blur the meaning of Israel, the meaning of who was an Israelite and who was part of the nation of Israel, by switching over from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent. They wanted to destroy the nation from within by blurring the lines between Israelite and non-Israelite. And so they point to a certain verse. I'll just bring it up, but I'm not going to go into detail now because I want to prepare a very detailed response, which maybe I'll hopefully be able to do by next week. But let me see if I could find it here. Just give me 1 second here. Just give me 1 second, and I will try to find it. One second, please. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. It's Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 4. Let me bring it up. Just give me a second. I'll bring it up. One second. In fact, let's do this a different way. So there's this person online named Henry Abramson who gets a lot of play and claims to be an historian. And he is. Some of his stuff is good. But he's also a rabbinical propagandist. He's not truly an historian. He is a rabbinical propagandist who masquerades as an historian. And so whenever it comes down to the rabbis, the Pharisees and the rabbis, they can do no wrong. He always distorts history to attribute only good, correct, and righteous motives to their decisions. And so let's listen to him for a second. And just give me a second to just cue this up. Take just a second. Let me see if I can find it here. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. And so we said this is Deuteronomy 7:4 for those of you who want to follow along at home. And let me share the screen here. So he says, frankly, if I were a rabbinical Jew, I would not attend any Jewish gathering without a firearm. Well, if you attend synagogue, you get to do all kinds of fun things like pray in Aramaic, which is not the language of our people. Of course, the rabbis are going to say that parts of the book of Daniel, parts of the book of Ezra are written in Aramaic. Those are post-exilic books. That just happens to be the language that was spoken at the time, but those are very, very few passages in Aramaic. They may point out that Lavan names the pile of rocks that serves as the border between himself and Jacob with an Aramaic name, so therefore Aramaic is holy because it appears in the Torah. Well, Egyptian words like Khartoumim, Egyptian magicians, also appear in Torah, as well as the name of even Joseph, Tzafnapaneach, is the Egyptian name that was given to him by Pharaoh, who brought him out of the dungeon. So therefore, I guess Egyptian is also holy. And there are other languages. There are Persian words in the book of Esther, many Persian words in the book of Esther. So I guess Persian is also holy, and on and on and on. Just because a word from a language appears in the Tanakh does not make that language the language of our people. I don't even like to use the word holy, okay? Our language is Hebrew, is biblical Hebrew. And that's the only language we should be returning to. So the rabbis, if you go to a rabbinical synagogue, you get the privilege of praying in Aramaic, many prayers in Aramaic, which is not our language. You get to bow down. You get to violate the 10 Commandments, the second commandment, by bowing down to a Torah scroll and kissing it. If a Talmud falls on the floor, you get to pick it up off the floor and kiss it before you put it back on the table. And you get to make sure that you stack books in the correct order of holiness. So the Mishnah will go back on top of the Talmud. So you get to do some outright, should we call it idol worship? Borderline idol worship. You can also get the privilege of going to the graves of dead rabbis and praying to them at their graves. No, I'm sorry. We're just asking them for intercession. We're not praying to them. We're praying to God in their name. Bullshit. These people are praying outright to the dead. I saw it. I did a video. Again, you can check my YouTube channels, a video of visiting the Rambam's grave in Tiberias, and these people were praying at the grave. And listen, I didn't hear their prayers, but it certainly looked like they were praying to the Rambam, which is really stupid. Rambam was, as one YouTuber likes to call him, a Muslim Jew or an Islamic Jew. So, okay, so just very briefly, and let me play this. Let me bring this up, and we're going to watch this rabbinical propagandist who masquerades as an historian. And if you listen to his words very carefully, you could see he's a propagandist. Not here, but in general. When it ever comes to anything regarding the rabbinical point of view, you can see he's a propagandist and not actually an historian. But let's check him out. And I'll stop it at certain points and make comments. Okay. So this is Henry Abramson. And off we go.
Chapter 7, verse 4. So verse 3 says, do not intermarry with them, meaning the surrounding non-Jewish nations. Do not give your daughters to the sons or take their daughters for your sons. And then in verse 4 it says, Ki yasir et bincha me'acharai va'avdu Elohim acherim v'chara af Hashem bachem v'hishmid.
First of all, for a professor of Jewish history, which is essentially what he is, he always points out he's not a rabbi. He certainly looks like one. His pronunciation of Hebrew is hideous. It's just embarrassing. But neither here nor there.
Maher, right? Now let's look at the translation. It says, for they will turn your children away from me to worship other gods. And the Lord's anger will blaze forth against you, and he will promptly wipe you out, right? Really strong word of criticism, I think. The problem with this particular passage, and normally Sefaria is amazing, but they're relying on translations that in many cases are already extant, and this translation is a little bit of a distortion. If we look carefully at the English, it's not for they, which is in the third person plural. It really should be for he, right?
Okay, so technically he is right about what he's saying here. So I'll just let him speak, and then we'll see why it's a bunch of nonsense. But technically speaking, he's kind of right.
The word in Hebrew is ki yasir, which is male, masculine, singular. For it's really he will turn your children. Now, your children is also not in the plural. It should be in the singular masculine, for your son,
So here he's also right. He's not right. So what he's doing now, what they're doing is, or what he's doing is taking the typical rabbinical interpretation, which is reading into the text. And let me just bring up a word that I would like to share with you. So there are two words. Let me bring it up here. So let's go to the only rabbi I trust, Rabbi AI, Rabbi Google Genesis. What do they call it? My AI agent's mixed up. So let's learn the word exegesis. Let's make this a bit bigger. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sharing the entire window, so I'll just read it. So exegesis is the critical explanation or objective interpretation. Okay, so keep in mind the word objective interpretation of a text, focusing on uncovering the author's original intended meaning. Derived from the Greek word whatever. It literally means to lead out or draw meaning out of the text itself. Okay, that's exegesis. In fact, let me grab this. Put it up on the screen. Shabbat shalom. Okay, so that's exegesis. Thank God we've covered his face over. He ain't much of a looker. I'm sorry, that's a cheap shot. Oh well. Tough nuggies. So that's exegesis. And then there's another word that we should learn, which is less common, but it's what this guy is really doing here, and that's called eisegesis. Eisegesis. So eisegesis is the process of reading your own preconceived ideas, personal biases, or modern cultural agendas into a text instead of letting the text speak for itself. An eisegetical approach forces the text to say what you want it to say. Let's put that one up. So we want to be doing exegesis. As an old Karaite teacher of mine used to say, and I'll give him credit where credit is due, he always used to say that our goal as Karaites, as Neo-Karaites, Tanach, is to understand the Torah as an ancient Israelite shepherd would have understood it in a public reading, or listening to it in a public reading. I don't have much respect for that particular teacher in many ways, but he did teach me some very important things, and that's one of them. Okay, so what is eisegesis? So eisegesis is the process of reading your own preconceived ideas, personal biases, or modern cultural agendas into a text instead of letting the text speak for itself. An eisegetical cuts off there, so I'll just read it. I think we get the idea, though. So an eisegetical approach forces the text to say what you want it to say. Let's try this one more time. Let me repost. Oops. 1 second here. Oh, you get the idea. I don't need to. Okay. So when we watch this Henry Abramson dude, let's ask ourselves, is he doing exegesis? Is he trying to understand the text as an ancient Israelite would have understood it? Or is he doing eisegesis? Is he reading into the text to try to have it fit, to try to retrofit it? Yes, retrofit it to his preconceived notions. In other words, his obsession to be a, what's the word I'm looking for? Bitch? No, that's not the right word. A lackey? No, let's go with bitch. A bitch for the rabbis. Okay, so let me take this away and let's continue listening to Mr. Dr. Henry Abramson.
In this context would mean your grandson.
Oh, and by the way, can everybody hear? I'm pretty sure I have it set right. Can you hear him? Can you hear him talking? Can you hear him when I play the video? You guys can hear him talking. Please just type in a 1 or a Y if you can. I'm going to assume the answer is yes. A little low? Okay, I'll make it. Okay, I'm going to make it louder. Thank you. 1 second. Okay, hopefully that's better. That's about as loud as it can go.
Wait, so let's understand this properly. It says, for he, meaning your son-in-law. It can't be your daughter-in-law because it would say for she. It would put it in the feminine. And by the way, in Hebrew, there is no neuter gender. Every single noun or pronoun has to be either male or female. So it's binary here. There's no other choice. And
that's not entirely true. There are some nouns which are dual. They can be both male and female at the same time, but I guess he's not that much of an expert in biblical Hebrew as he claims to be, but at any rate.
Is masculine. So this means that if you have to imagine yourself as a grandparent, if your daughter marries a non-Jewish male, if you as a Jewish person have a daughter who is Jewish and she marries a non-Jewish male, the non-Jewish male, according to this verse, will turn your son, which is your grandson, away from God. That's the statement of the verse here. Let's look at it in the commentary of Rashi. I have it abbreviated on the right here, but let's look at it in greater detail. So Rashi here is quoting the Talmud.
So now he's going to Rashi, the worst Torah commentator in the history of Judaism, as I always like to say, and I always like to call him, instead of Rashi, Rash. Let's lap off the final I. And the reason I do that is because many, many years ago, back in the 1990s, when Hebrew word processing was just in its infancy, and it would do autocorrect, whenever I would type in the word Rashi, I was actually a rabbinical Jew for about close to 10 years, and Orthodox in varying degrees Jew for about 10 years. Whenever I type in the word Rashi, it would autocorrect it to Rash. So I stuck with that. I like that autocorrection. It makes sense to me. So Rash, now he brings in Rash, the most incomprehensible, worst Torah commentator in the history of Judaism, which is of course why rabbinical Jews love him so much. And I don't hate all rabbinical commentators. There's some excellent ones, and I always point out the Ibn Ezra, excellent Karaite leaning in many ways, not Karaite for sure, but Karaite leaning in his interpretation of the Torah. But Rashi's the worst of the worst. He's a hideous Torah commentator. Anyway, so here we go.
Tractate Yevamot 23a, and it reads like this, i.e., the son of the heathen, meaning the non-Jew, when he marries thy daughter, will turn away thy grandson, whom thy daughter will bear unto him from following me, i.e., following God. This teaches us that thy daughter's son, who was born of a non-Jewish father, is still called your son, but your son's son, who was born of a non-Jewish woman, is not called your son, right? Because the verse only talks about the situation in which your grandson by your non-Jewish son-in-law would go away from God. It does not even bother talking about your grandson from your non-Jewish daughter-in-law because...
Okay, this is getting a bit confusing. Let me try to pick it apart. We're through with him. I'll leave Mr. Propagandist and Rash on the screen for a second. Let me just share it a slightly different way. No, it's not showing up. I don't know why. Weird. 1 second. There we go. So let's read what Rash has to say. So Dr. Dr. Abramson is saying that, if we go back just a bit, and I'm just going to do this very briefly, and then next week maybe I'll get into it a bit more, right? Let's go back just a drop. Okay, so he says that that the subject of the verb here is the person's son-in-law, so it's the father speaking. Okay, fair enough. That's your son, but it says the son-in-law, and then when it says bincha, your son, that this is the grandson. So this, okay, let me explain. So what it says here in the Hebrew is ki yasir et bincha me'achrai v'abdu Elohim acherim v'hara'af Yahweh b'chem wa'ishmidha maher. So this is literally what it says. When he, because he will remove or deviate your son from away from me, and they will worship other gods, and the fury, literally the fire, will come out of the nose of Yahweh, but the fury of Yahweh will be upon them, and he will destroy you very quickly. So forget the idea that this is going back and forth between the singular and the plural on a number of occasions. It's very common in biblical Hebrew. So this says that, okay, and let me just read the verse 3. So this is Deuteronomy 7:3. So this is speaking about the 7 nations, the Canaanite nations. Do not intermarry with them. And then we get clarification. We have here what's called netnach, that's a semicolon. Should not give your daughter to his son. And his daughter you shall not take for your son. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughter to his son. To whose son? To some Canaanite guy's son. Okay, that's clear. And do not take some Canaanite guy's daughter for your son. So that's what verse 3 is clearly saying. Okay. Ki yasir et bincha. So now what Dr. Abramson is saying here, quoting Rash, is that this is now talking about so let me again translate it literally. Ki yasir et bincha. He will deviate your son away from me. Okay. So the question is, who's the he and who's your son? Okay, well, clearly we already have here, we're already talking about in the previous verse, okay? Livinecha, okay? Do not take his daughter, the Canaanite's daughter, to your son. And we have the same word here, okay? Your son. So clearly, since the words are occurring right next to each other in parallel, related verses, then it's talking about the same thing. So this is clearly, we're talking about an Israelite's son, right? So this is clearly an Israelite's son, okay? So then who's the ki yasir? Okay, so, okay, again, let me give, I'm not going to do the whole thing now. I'm going to go into in detail hopefully next week. But what I want to say is, because we're just gonna go too long if we go into it in detail. But what Dr. Abramson, the good doctor, is saying is that here. So again, it says he will remove your son from away from me, or he will take your son away from me. This is God speaking. Okay, this is Yahweh speaking. So who's the he? So he is your son-in-law. Your daughter has married a Canaanite, and the he is your daughter's Canaanite husband. And when it says your son, he's saying that is the child of your daughter and her Canaanite husband. In other words, your grandson, whose mother is your daughter, and whose father is a Canaanite man. So this is clearly not what it's saying here. This is eisegesis. This is not exegesis. This is reading into the text to prove a predetermined point of view rather than exegesis, because it's very clear, because we have the word bincha here in verse 4, we have the word livinecha in verse 3, that it's talking about the same son, and clearly verse 3 is talking about the son of an Israelite. But here, Abramson says that it's talking about the son of, or the grandson of an Israelite whose daughter, that Israelite's daughter married a Canaanite, and that this is grandson, and then this is the Canaanite son, the one who will take your grandson. So your Canaanite son-in-law, right? That's why it's a son-in-law, will take away your grandson, your daughter's son from Yahweh. Okay? And this is used, this eisegesis, this reading into the text is used by Rash to attempt to prove that matrilineal descent applies. And let's listen again to the explanation. Oh, I have to reshare it a different way. Well, let me just go ahead here. Okay, so we're going to read Rash's comment. So, for he will turn away your son from following me. Okay, i.e., the son of the heathen, when he marries your daughter, will turn away your grandson, whom your daughter will bear unto him from following me. This teaches us that your daughter's son, who is born of a heathen, is termed your son. But your son's son, who is born of a heathen woman, is not termed your son, but for her son. Okay, so what is he saying here? He's saying that, let's go back to this verse. Okay, so he's saying that this son really means the grandson. Let me bring it back here so we get the markings on the text. Okay, so this first, the subject of the sentence, he will take away your son. So your Canaanite son-in-law, your daughter made a mistake, married a Canaanite, and that Canaanite son-in-law, your Canaanite son-in-law, will take away your grandson from Yahweh. And because this clearly, in the eyes of Rash and Dr. Abramson, means your grandson, then therefore, because your grandson is called your son, and the son's father was a Canaanite, but the son's mother, again, in Rash's opinion, and the son's mother was an Israelite, so therefore this proves that the only reason you can call this grandson your son is if he's still an Israelite. Again, that's a leap of faith or a leap of stupidity. And therefore, since the father, this grandson's father is a Canaanite, but this grandson's mother is your daughter, an Israelite, therefore this proves that it goes by the mother, that descent goes by the mother rather than by the father, because otherwise you would not be able to call this grandson, it doesn't say grandson there, it says your son, you would not be able to call this grandson your son or your grandson if he weren't Jewish. Again, I'm paraphrasing Rash here. Okay, so therefore he's Jewish, and because he's called your son or your grandson, and his father is non-Jewish, his mother is Jewish, retroactively retrofitting the word Jewish, but again, that's when Rashi and Abramson would have been writing, they already would have called them Jews. So therefore, since this grandson's father is non-Jewish, his grandson's mother is Jewish, and yet he's still called your son or your grandson, therefore he must himself be Jewish, and that proves that when someone has a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father, they're still Jewish. That's the logic, quote-unquote logic. Okay? The insanity of this, the eisegesis, the reading into this text is embarrassing. Anyone who is not brainwashed into the rabbinical movement will see right through this eisegesis, this complete mangling of the text. Okay? Clearly, from context, okay, when it says bincha, your son, in verse 4, it's clearly talking about the same son in verse 3, the binecha, okay? It's basically the same word. The only reason it's vowelized different is because you have the l, the lamed preposition, which means two, but otherwise it's exactly the same son. Le vinecha, bincha, same word, means your son. Verse 3, it clearly means your Israelite, Mr. Israelite, your son. And so here, it can only mean your son, okay? So ki yasir. So then the question is, so it says that someone will take your son, I'm an Israelite, will take my son away from Yahweh. Who is this someone? Well, there are a number of explanations, including grammatical explanations, that explain this very clearly. Okay, so this could be, I think I'm going to get into it next week because I want to prepare proof texts. But let's just say that there are some very simple and straightforward explanations, including the idea that this is, that the, again, I'm going to have to get into some grammatical details, but for those of you who are familiar with biblical Hebrew, that the active future is really an expression of the passive, that your son will be taken away. Or it could just mean the generic Canaanite, okay, the Canaanite, or representative of the Canaanite nation, or the abstract plural, the Canaanite nation in general. Whoever it is, or whatever the grammatical possibilities are here, and there are a number of them, I would say that really this, again, is just representing, it's using the active to represent the active future, to represent the passive. So really the way to translate this would be, because your son will be taken away from before me. This is Yahweh speaking. By doing what? By marrying a Canaanite woman. And it has nothing to do whatsoever with matrilineal descent. You really have to twist yourself into a pretzel, which this guy looks like, it's more like he's been run over by a truck than twisted into a pretzel, but one of the two. And you really have to do a number, as we saw he and Rash did. Well, he's just quoting Rash, in order to come up, in order to read into this, in order to do the eisegesis, to eisegetically say that this is somehow a defense of matrilineal descent. Again, I will go into the grammar specifically, hopefully next week, and I will bring proof verses to show that this is the case, but there's no way that this can mean your grandson. It clearly means your son, because it's the same word as used here. These two verses are part of the same thought, part of the same law, you could say. And so the rabbis had to play gymnastics, or do gymnastics. They had to become very creative, very innovative, in order to come up, in order to use this verse to somehow prove their desire to deliberately cast off what the Torah and what the Tanakh say throughout the entire Tanakh. And we'll go into one other verse in Ezra at another point, and show why that also is not a proof of matrilineal descent. Those are their two main verses. But to change the Torah from patrilineal descent, which is clear throughout, we're going to see it. We saw it already in Numbers. Your father's house, your family, your father's house. We saw that phrase used a number of times. To change from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent, just as they changed the new year from the first day of the first month in the springtime to their fake holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the seventh month, which their fake holiday is coming up soon. Of course, we celebrate it as it truly is spoken about in the Torah as Yom Teruah, the first day of the seventh month, the day of shouting out to heaven, crying out to heaven. And just as they have done so many other things with the Torah in their dying movement, which is thankfully on its last legs. So that's what I have to say for today. It's sad, actually. Can you guys see the screen there? I hope so. It's sad, actually, but thank God this, oh, why is it not showing up? That's weird. I don't get it. That's weird. I don't get it. I don't know why it's not showing up on the screen, but it doesn't matter. Okay. What's going on here? At any rate, I hope that was able to get across. And are there any questions? The screen share is a little bit strange. At any rate, if you weren't able to see the text, then I hope I was able to explain it well enough. If you can't see the text next time on the screen, please let me know, and I'll disconnect it and then reconnect it. Okay, any questions, any comments before we go into the book of Zefaniah? So we are in Zefaniah, in Zefaniah chapter 3, verse 9. We'll finish Zefaniah today, and then we will continue on in our journey with what are called the minor prophets, not because they're less important, but because their books are just physically shorter. Okay? So let's take a quick break for a minute. I'm going to drink some water and put on a song, and we'll be back in just a second.
Abraham, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, vino en el cielo y en la estrellería, y el dolo santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham había. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer entera de nada, día en día ella preguntaba, ¿qué tiene la cara tan demonada? Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham había, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Al fin de los 9 meses pariquería, iba caminando por campos en viñas, y a su marido no le descubría, topó una mara y parería. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Alta, alta es la luna cuando empieza a esclarecer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Mis ojos se hincharon de tanto mirar la mar. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Dos taras tiene con él, la una que arrolla dos, la otra que echa sheshpesh. La una que arrolla dos, la otra que echa sheshpesh. Mi querido
Okay,
salto
welcome back,
vano y una vara de expander. Mi madre.
So once again, you are attending the World Alliance of Qara'im Shabbat Torah study, and I would be amiss if I did not do my usual plugs, at least for a couple of minutes. So we have a lot of important projects that we're working on. Again, I cannot overstate how important it is at this critical point in Israel's history, state of Israel, the modern state of Israel, the nation of Israel's history, to start getting the word out, to continue getting the word out about Karaism, Tanach-only, Chozrim b'Tanach, It's absolutely critical. I personally believe, and I'm not exaggerating, it's a matter of life and death for the nation. Those who stick with false forms of religion, such as rabbinical Judaism, I truly believe that when the you-know-what hits the you-know-what, then their lives are literally in danger. So we have a lot of projects that we're working on, and including setting up a physical community here in Israel in the Golan Heights, and we want to set up also a satellite community in Jerusalem, setting up a learning center, eventually schools, newsletters, parsha sheets, all of this kind of stuff. And we need your financial assistance in order to be able to do all of this very, very important work. So if you have a rich uncle, or maybe you are a rich uncle, then please, write us a check with a bunch of zeros on it. I promise it will be put to good use. But if you're not a rich uncle, then other things you could do are to join the World Alliance of Qara'im. The QR code is up in the left, and the links, all of the links are in the descriptions. I really would appreciate that everyone who comes to this Torah study on a regular basis would at least do that. It's not very expensive. It's about half the price of a cell phone service in the United States. And I know some people in the study have done this and have donated in other ways, but some have not. And that's the least I would ask from you. If you have not, then please do. You're helping us financially, and this makes a huge difference. In addition, if you usually give tzedakah, charity, tithe, you give a portion of your monthly salary, then I ask you to consider directing that towards the World Alliance of Qara'im. We have a nonprofit organization set up in the United States, if that is concerned, or you can just, again, use any of the donation links in the description. I'll put one up right now. Just give me a second here. Where did that go? Okay. So it's a link to donate by debit or credit card anywhere in the world. And any other donations you would like to give to us, I promise you will be put to good use at this critical time. So please consider supporting us financially, and please know that you'll be making a huge difference in the future of the nation of Israel. And I don't say that lightly. I truly believe this from the bottom of my heart. This is so important, what we're doing right now, critical for the future of the nation. And I don't know, there are a couple of other people out there, thank God, who are doing it. I'm not going to mention any names, but a couple come to mind. They're doing a great job. God bless them. But we also, or we are one of those people / groups, and our mission is extremely important, extremely critical. So please consider donating to us. Okay, enough said about that. If you're not part of our World Alliance of Qara'im WhatsApp announcements group, then you should be. In it, we send out all our announcements. That's free and open to everybody. So if we have an upcoming Torah study or any other announcements that we wish to let the public know, then we publish it among other places in that WhatsApp group. We also have a Facebook page. You can see all the links in the description. I also should say I have some services that I do. This is not part of the World Alliance of Qara'im per se. This is my own personal services. Of course, it was also a passion of mine, including the teaching of Biblical Hebrew. So I do private lessons in Biblical Hebrew. I know a number of my students, past and present, are here now, and we have just an amazing time. It's just it's really good stuff. That's what I could say. I have 1 or 2 slots left open at this point, and if you're interested in learning Biblical Hebrew on a one-on-one basis, then please contact me privately, and I'll be happy to do it. I also do what's called biblical life coaching. So the idea of biblical life coaching is to uncover Yahweh's mission in your life, or to help uncover Yahweh's mission in your life and help you work towards it. If you're interested in that, also contact me privately, and we could set up biblical life coaching sessions as well. So Hadassah Thomas says, I know this is off topic, but I really need an answer to this. I'm a Tanach-only believer. So how are we atoned for unintentional sins now since we don't have a temple? Thank you. That's a long story. The basic bottom line, Hadassah, is I know this is going to sound like a radical idea, but I really wouldn't worry about it too much, okay? We don't have a temple. So there's not so much you can do. All you could do is try to be a better person each day. Ask for forgiveness for any sins that you recognize. Try to recognize those things you're doing wrong, as we all need to do each and every day. Speak to Yahweh, speak to your own heart, speak to other people that you trust, and just try each day to be a good person, maybe a little bit more wiser, or a little bit wiser and better person each day, as we all are trying to do, including myself. And not to worry about it too much, not to sweat the small stuff. Honestly, I know it sounds like it's a big thing because it's in the Torah, but I actually believe that animal sacrifices will not be brought back in the future. I've spoken about this in the past. There are certain proof verses which I like to use, such as, I believe it's Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 15, and then Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 16. If I'm not mistaken, you can look them up yourselves. But animal sacrifices, in my opinion, was a relic of the past. It was necessary at the time because that's the way all cultures worship their gods, through animal sacrifices. But I don't think that it will be relevant to the future. I don't think that when a temple is rebuilt on the Temple Mount on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, I don't think there will be animal sacrifices. That's my personal opinion. You should also know that there are not everything was an animal sacrifice. It was also called a mincha, which was a grain sacrifice. And there are also certain sacrifices that if you don't have the money to pay for an animal, or for a mammal, then you pay for a bird. And if you don't have the money to pay for a bird, then you can bring a grain sacrifice. So animal sacrifices are not essential to gaining atonement. It was the way that Yahweh communicated with us in ancient times, because it's the way that all nations in the area communicated with their gods, and Yahweh didn't want to take us completely out of that cultural context. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. There's nothing you can do anyway about it. So just try to be a better person each day. Okay, that's my answer. I love animals too. I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 30 years. I do eat fish once in a while, but I do not want to kill animals and consume them. There's something barbaric about that. I wouldn't take my cat and chop it up and turn it into soup. So why would I want to do that to a cow or a lamb? They have feelings just like a cat or a dog. So I hope also, and I believe, that animal sacrifices will not come back in the future. Obviously, we're allowed to eat animals in this day and age, but it just doesn't work for me, and it hasn't worked for me for 30 years. The only animals I eat once in a while are fish. Fish are lower level animals. They don't have the same feelings that a mammal would. And so once in a while I will eat fish, but even that I don't really do so often, and I certainly don't eat birds or mammals. Anyway, let's go on to Zefaniah. So I'll share the screen. And by the way, there are some well-known rabbis, not that rabbis justify it, but you should know that what I said is not an isolated point of view. So even very famously, a rabbi known as Avraham Yitzhak Cohen Cook also believed that animal, and he's very big here in Israel, died, maybe 100 years ago already, but essentially the founder of what's called the Dati Leumi, or the religious Zionist movement, who are slightly better than the ultra-Orthodox, slightly closer to true Torah observant, not by much, but slightly. And he also was famously a vegetarian. I think he would eat meat on Shabbat, because the Talmud somewhere says that you cannot enjoy Shabbat without eating meat. So being a Talmudic Jew, I believe he ate meat on Shabbat, but he was a vegetarian during the week, if I'm not mistaken. And he also predicted that in the future there would be no more animal sacrifices. And I think also the Rambam, I'm not a big fan of the Rambam. Again, this YouTuber who I kind of have a love-hate relationship with calls the Rambam an Islamic Jew. I think that's quite accurate, since the Rambam was just following along what was going on in the Islamic world at the time, or Islamic Muslim-controlled Iberian Peninsula and North Africa at the time. Something called the Mutazilite school of thought, which involved reviving the ancient Greek philosophers, particularly Aristotle. That's what the Rambam did. He just applied it to Judaism. So he's a Muslim Jew. But he also predicted, or alluded to the idea that animal sacrifices was not something eternal, but something that was appropriate in its place and time. Okay, let me share the screen. And we are in Zefaniah chapter 3, starting in verse 6, was it? Let's see. Starting in verse, there we go. Starting in verse 9. And what did I just do? Oh. So let's just read through verse 3. So essentially, all of Zefaniah has kind of been, remember, Zefaniah is prophesying in the time of Josiah. We saw that Josiah's reign ended within, if I remember the numbers correctly from last week, about 25 years before Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians. So we're right at the end. Josiah was essentially the last good king, quote unquote, good king of Judah. And this is an oracle. Zefaniah is basically warning Judah of its impending destruction. And that's what we see here also. So I'll just read up to verse 9, chapter 3, verse 9. In the English, we'll do Robert Alta's translations. It's better than the NIV. So woe, sullied and besmirched, oppressive city, speaking about Jerusalem. She heeded not the voice, did not accept reproof. In Yahweh she did not trust, nor draw near to her God. Her nobles within her are roaring lions. Her judges are wolves of the steppes. They gnawed all the bones by the morning. Her prophets are unsteady. False prophets, of course, men of treachery. Her priests profane the holy, did outrage to the teaching. Yahweh is righteous in her midst. He does not do wrong. Morning after morning, he brings his justice to light. It never lacks. But the wrongdoer knows no shame. I've cut off nations. Their corner towers are devastated. I've destroyed their streets with none passing by. Their towns are demolished with no men, without dwellers. I said, but fear me, if you accept reproof, her abode will not be cut off. All that I had summoned against her, again speaking about Jerusalem. Yet they continued acting ruinously in all their deeds. Therefore wait for me, said Yahweh, for the day I rise as witness. For my judgment is to gather the nations, to assemble kingdoms, to pour out my wrath upon them, all my smoldering anger. For in my zealous fire all the earth shall be consumed. Okay, so let's pick it up in 9. 9 is a very kind of famous verse, I would say. We're going to head on over to the Hebrew. And let me just make sure everybody can hear me and see the screen, correct? Let's do a sound and vision check. Everybody can hear me and see the screen, see the text on the screen of Zefaniah 3 in Hebrew. please let me know just by typing in a 1 or okay, thumbs up works. Cool. Okay, so we're switching over to, or we're starting in chapter 3, verse 9 in Zefaniah. Okay. כי אז אהפוך אל עמים שפה ברורה, לקרוא כולם בשם יהוה, לעבדו שכם אחד. Because then I shall convert or turn over all of the nations into or to a clear language. לקרוא כולם בשם יהוה, so that all of them call out the name of in the name of Yahweh, la'avdo shechem echad, and to serve him as one. Literally means one shoulder, but in one accord. They usually translate that as. Okay. We'll get a Robert Alter on that one. For then I will transform people with a pure language, for them all to call in the name of Yahweh, to serve him with single intent. And we have a commentary there, pure language. There's an interesting idea here that perverse or harmful behavior is entrammeled. What that word means. Robert Alter often baffles me with words. If I were studying for the SATs, I'd be very wise to read his commentary because he uses words that I've never heard of before. I'm not even going to look it up. Entrammeled with a corruption of language, a notion George Orwell would develop in a celebrated essay written during World War II about how Nazi totalitarianism had subverted the German language. Thus, the gift of pure language is necessary so that people can truly call to God. And some people will understand this as safa brura, as a return to everybody speaking Hebrew. I don't think that's really what it implies here. I think it just means, speaking clearly. But some people interpret it that way. And there are other verses that imply in the Tanakh that imply that in the end of days, that the lingua franca, the international language, will no longer be English, but will be Hebrew. I believe it will. I think it's clear that it will. Okay. מעבר לנהרי כוש, עטפרי בת פוצי, יובילון מן התי. Okay, so on the other side of the rivers of Ethiopia, Athare, let's get Robert up on that one. That's kind of a rare word. Tira, Putsai, Putsi. Yeah, it's kind of a very poetic verse. So, okay, I'll just do the Robert Alter translation on this one. So, from beyond the rivers of Cush, they who entreat me, that's Atarai. Atira is to entreat. Okay, Atar means to, this word right here, Atar means to entreat or to inquire of, I guess you could say. Bat Putzai, whom I dispersed. So that's how he's translated in Bat Putzai. So Lafitz. So yeah. Yovilun min hatis. They shall bring to me my grain offering or my tribute. So let me just look up one or two things for myself. A very kind of strange construction. It's probably the only place it's used. Well, the root is used in other places, but in this one. All right. Anywho, so on the other sides of the rivers of Ethiopia, or across the river of Ethiopia, or rivers of Ethiopia, Atarai Bat Putsi. Again, it's kind of a very poetic language, but Those who I have scattered shall entreat me, and they shall bring tribute to me. All right, let's see if there's any commentary here. Cush. Right, in Cush. Right, it's Nubia, south of Egypt. So Cush is, like we said, basically Ethiopia or southern Egypt, Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt means southern Egypt where the elevation is higher. Okay. Verse 11. ביום ההוא לא תבושי מכל עלילותייך, אשר פשט בי. On a day, I will no longer be embarrassed or shamed from all of your deeds, all of your evil deeds is the implication that you committed against me. So Robert Alter on that one. On the day you shall not be shamed by all your acts in which you trespassed against me. You shall not be shamed from all of the evil deeds which you did against me. Ki az asir mikirbech alize ga'avatech. Let's translate up to there. Because then I shall remove from your midst the ones who rejoice over your pride. Aliz means happy. So the rejoicers, the ones who are joyful over your pride. So Robert Alter deals with that one. For then I remove from your midst those merry with your pride. Velot tosifi ligavha od behar kodshi. You shall not continue to exalt yourself anymore on my holy mountain, or to be prideful on my holy mountain. It's very poetic. And no longer be haughty on my holy mountain. So there's any commentary there? There's not. One second, it's the noise outside. Just wait for it to pass. So we'll read this again. ביום ההוא לא תבושי מכל עלילותייך אשר פשט בי, כי אז אסיר מקרבך עליזה גאוותך, ולא תוסיפי לגבהה עוד בהר קודשי. Verse 12. והשארתי בקרבך עם עני ודל, וחסו בשם יהוה. And I shall leave in your midst a poor, or a humble and poor, basically poor and destitute people. Hasu b'shem Yahweh, and they shall take refuge in the name of Yahweh. So all the prideful members of Israel, like the rabbis, will be removed, will disappear, hopefully by repenting. Otherwise, hey, the rest is in the hands of Yahweh, not in my hands. Verse 12, and I will leave in your midst the poor and lonely people. It's lonely, but okay, interesting translation. And they shall shelter in the Lord's name. Notice they shall take shelter in the Hebrew it says b'shem Yahweh. Hasu b'shem Yahweh. They shall take shelter in the name of Yahweh. Again, showing that anyone who does not call out, does not pray to the name of, hold on, give me 1 second. I just want to say goodbye to some people who are leaving. Give me 1 second. PT. No, I thought they were leaving, but they're not. Leaving later. Cat, you have to go out. Okay, sorry about that. There were some people I thought were leaving who are not yet. They shall take refuge in the name of Yahweh. So if they're calling out as sadly, rabbinical Jews, if they're calling out to Hashem or Adonai or Elohim or Elohim or Adonai or Adokadonai or whatever, all these Elohim, I already said Elohim, then they're not calling out. They're not taking refuge in the name of Yahweh. One of the things that must happen in order for the Geulah, for the redemption, to occur is that we must start calling out, praying to, talking to, using, of course, never disrespectfully, but using the name of Yahweh. We must call out to him by name. Take refuge in the name of Yahweh. It doesn't say take refuge in Yahweh. Just have to take refuge in the name of Yahweh. Okay. Just check in and see if there's any comments, questions. So today I'm doing the study inside. Thank God, because there's so much noise going on outside. Would have been constant interruptions, and so I decided the last minute to do it inside. That's why the lighting might look a little bit different. I usually like to do it outside in the evening. Here it's beautiful, but today I'm doing it inside, and it's nice and quiet. Got the AC running. Okay. Right. And Robert Alt has a comment on that. There's an obvious antithesis to the haughty and the proud invoked in the previous verse. The sins of Judah are associated with the arrogance and self-importance of its ruling class, which will be replaced by the simple people who preserve the true values of the nation. Let me just check in and make sure that everything is broadcasting as it should. And it is. Okay, verse 13. She'erith Yisrael lo ya'asu awala. So the remainder, the remnant of Israel, shall not do any iniquity, any evil. Ulo yidabru chazav, ulo yimase b'fihim leshon tarmit. So this remnant, right, this poor and humble remnant of Israel, all of the haughty ones are going to be removed. Sadly, that's going to include the rabbinical movement, those who are so haughty and so stubborn, who follow in the stubbornness of their heart, this sins of their ancestors. Again, Leviticus chapter 26:40, I always point to. I hope they repent. I really do. I really try to help these people. Maybe that sounds, haughty and arrogant on its own, but it really comes from the heart. I was really trying to, this whole, anyway, I don't get into all that right now. At the end of the day, everyone is responsible for their own decisions. So they shall not speak falsehoods, and in their mouths shall not be found the language of deception or the language of deceit. Because they will graze. In other words, I'll just read it. So they'll graze and lie down, and there will be no one to bother them. So this is the language of shepherding. So yir'u, third word, means they shall graze, like sheep would graze in the field. And they shall lie down, like kneel down on the ground as sheep would to rest. And no one will bother them. No one will molest them, and I don't mean that. Whatever, I can make a couple of jokes here, but I'll refrain. At any rate, so this is the language again of shepherding. So Israel, this humble remnant of Israel, is likened to sheep who are just happily grazing on the pasture, and they can even rest by kneeling down on the ground because they don't have to worry about any predators molesting them. Okay. It is a beautiful view of the future, Hadassah. Okay, and Robert Alta has a comment on that one. There should be in their mouth no tongue of deceit. This picks up the idea of the need for transformation of language as a precondition of moral transformation. Very nice. So they shall graze and bed down. Both verbs invoke the familiar metaphor of a people as a flock to be led by a faithful shepherd, the just king. Okay, right. So Robert Alta, of course, being a good commentator, is picking up on this language of shepherding. Right. Verse 14. So Rani Bat Sion Hariu Yisrael. So rejoice, daughter of Zion. Shout out. In other words, joyfully shout out, Israel. Simchi or al-zi. There's that word again. We saw this before. Aliz means joyful, and here al-zi. This is the verb form, the imperative or the command form. So the word, if you ever heard the name Eliza, right? Eliza. That's what Eliza means, joyful one or one who rejoices. This is beautiful. And it's also a famous verse. Rani bat Sion. So rejoice, daughter of Zion. Hariyo Yisrael. Shout for joy, Israel. Simchi wa alzi. Be happy and full of joy. L'chol lev, with all of your heart. Bat Yerushalayim, daughter of Jerusalem. Right. So this is, again, as the title implies, this is all restoration prophecy. This is end of days prophecy when Yahweh comes back to Israel. Israel comes back to Yahweh. That nach. Haysir Yahweh mishpatayich pin'ah oyvech. Yahweh has taken away judgments against you. He's turned away your enemy. Melech Israel, Yahweh, kirbech. This is kind of a semicolon, comma. The King of Israel, Yahweh, is in your midst. Lutir'i ra od. You shall no longer fear bad things happening to you. Bad things. Beautiful, right? What, I just love these lines. B'yom hahu ye'amer Yerushalayim al tira'i Zion al yirpu yadayach. On that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, do not fear. To Zion, do not literally loosen your hands, but that's an expression. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. Okay. Let not your hands fall slack. Discrepancy in. Okay, this is just a difference in the way they number the verses. Doesn't matter. So this is classic biblical poetic parallelism. So it says Jerusalem shall not fear. It shall be said that Jerusalem shall not fear. Or Jerusalem do not fear. Zion, do not loosen your hands. Okay, so what is the expression? Slacken your hands or loosen your hands. Again, it's kind of a metaphor for fear. Let me just see if I can explain that a little bit better. Give me 1 second here. See if we can find some other verses. So, all right, I'll just read this. Meaning in context, in biblical Hebrew, hands represent strength or readiness to act. When someone's hands grow slack or drop, they're giving up, losing hope, or becoming helpless. Paired with al tira'i, do not fear. The phrase is an encouragement command telling Jerusalem not to despair or give up hope. Okay, so that kind of sums it up. Okay, so fear is in parallel with loosen your hands, meaning, let down your guard kind of thing, or give up hope. So this is parallelism. Okay, this phrase is in, it's called synonymous parallelism with this phrase, or word by word even. So let's see if I can grab this, show. So Jerusalem and Zion are the same thing. And fear and give up hope, loosen your hands, literally, are the same thing. Okay, 1 and 2. I should make this a different color. Okay. 1 and 2. Okay, so a lot of the poetic verses in the Tanakh are in what's called, use parallel structure or use parallelism. The 3 main types of parallelism: synonymous parallelism, antithetical parallelism, and what I like to call augmentative parallelism. And this is a classic example of synonymous parallelism. It's so nice they repeated it twice, and it poetically emphasizes the fact. Okay, all right. So that's verse 16. I think Robert Alter has a comment. Oh no, he's a comment on verse 17. Yahweh Elohayach b'kirbech, Gibor Yoshia. Yahweh, your God, is in your midst. He is a hero. Better word. A mighty man, or not mighty man. Let's not go there. A mighty one who will who will bring salvation. Yasis alayach b'simha. He will rejoice over you in happiness, meaning Yahweh will. Yahrish ba'avato. Yaril alayach berina. He will Yahrish. He will let's see what I'll try on that one. So it literally means to make quiet. Harish ba'alatzon. Harish, that's it. Okay, my mistake. So harash, to be silent, to be still, to plow, to engrave, to devise. So this is kind of an interesting use. At any rate, so Robert Alter translates that one as where were we? He renews his love. He rejoices over you in happiness. He exults over you with glad song. Okay. He's got a comment on that one. He renews his love. The Masoretic text reads Yaharish ba'avato. He's silent in his love, but it is unclear why the living God should be silent. Translation follows the reading of the Septuagint, which appears to have used a Hebrew text that showed Yahadish ba'avato. The Hebrew graphemes for R and D being plus. Oh, okay. So what Robert Alter is saying is that the Septuagint, which was put together in Alexandria, Egypt, it was a Greek translation of the Tanakh. Says Hadesh. This is actually a textual error, and that should be Dalet, and that would make more sense. But nonetheless, I hold by the canonicity. I hold by the Masoretic texts, and some scholars will say that as Robert Alter is saying here, that the Septuagint is using an alternate, more original version of the Hebrew text for its translation, but one could just as easily make a case that it can't figure out what the word means, so it's amending the word to something that in its eyes makes more sense, even though that's not what the original text is. Anyway, that's getting a bit out of our scope right now. But Robert Alter is translating this according to the Septuagint, or he's using his translation is based on that of the Septuagint. Okay. Verse 18, which his verse 17. So nure, this is also not a very common word. Let's look it up. Okay. Got it. Okay. At any rate, so Remi Ma'ed, Safti Mimech. This is a very poetic verse. Remi Ma'ed, Asafti Mimech Hayu. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one, because that is quite an interesting one. I'll put it that way. Those sorrowing from a lack of festivals, bearing her disgrace, I will gather from you. And the NIV on that one gives, well, it doesn't matter. We'll just go here for now. And I will carry away from you your disgrace or disgrace. Okay. One second. Yeah, so the dumbering is a little bit different here. So those sorrowing from lack of festivals, bearing her disgrace, I will gather from you. That's verse 17, and here it's verse 18. Verse 19. Hinani oseh et kol me'anayech ba'et. Behold, I will take care of, I will do things to all of your oppressors at that time. Okay, I'm about to deal with all your tormentors at the time. Shati et hasolea wahanidaha kabetz. Let's translate up to there. And I will redeem or save the one who limps. Wahanidaha kabetz, and I will gather the one who's been distanced, who's been shunned, who's been cast away. Samtim letila, and I will place upon them praise. L'shem b'chol haaretz bashtam. I should, again, let me just re-parse that. Okay. Shati et tzolea. So I will save the one who is lame or the one who limps. Ani dahak abetz v'samtim. Okay, and the one who's been cast away, I will gather in. Samtim letila u'l'shem b'chol haaretz bashtam. let's do it. V'simtam l'tila u'l'shem. And I will pour upon them praise and a good name or famous name. V'chol ha'aretz bashtam. Throughout the entire world or throughout the entire land. And their bashtam is their shame. In other words, the implication is take away their shame of all those who have been cast out and turn their names into great names. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. And I will rescue the lame and the scattered I will gather, and I will make them a glorious name throughout all the land of their shame. Haaretz bashtam. Okay. And last verse in Zefaniah. Beautiful verse. By the way, let's see if there's any other. Okay, but ba'et hahi avi etchem. So at that time, or in those days, in that time, I will bring you. Ba'et kapsi etchem. And at that time, I will. Ba'et kapsi, and at the time that I gather you in, or at that time I will gather you in. Maybe we better way to translate it into English. Ki eten etchem l'shem u'letihila. Because I will put upon you a good name or a famous name and praise, or a good name and praise, b'chol amei haaretz, among all the peoples of the world, of the land, of the earth. B'shuvi et shivutchem ba'einechem, amar Yahweh. When I return your captives, your exiles, before your very eyes, declares Yahweh. Let's get a Robert Alter on that. At that time I will bring you, at that time gather you, for I will make you a glorious name among all the peoples of the earth when I restore your fortunes before your eyes. So literally it doesn't say restore your fortunes, literally it says Beshuvi et shivutechem, when I bring back your exiles, or your exileness, your exile. Captivity. Okay, when I undo your captivity or bring back your captive ones. Amar, before your very eyes, declares Yahweh. Okay, very beautiful. So when I restore your fortune before your eyes, the prophecies of Zefaniah began with a vision of doom threatening the kingdom of Judah, the terrible day of the Lord. They end here with a promise of restoration and exile. Either this chapter is by the hand of a prophet writing after 586 BCE, as some scholars conclude. So they're saying that this was added after the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon. But Zefaniah is following out of logic of the scenario he has been sketching. First catastrophe will overtake the kingdom, resulting in its destruction and the exile of its people. Then the people will be restored to its land. Okay. I'll go with the second one. And that concludes the book of Zefaniah. Okay. So let's just recap Zefaniah. Oops. Okay, so we had judgment against the whole earth. And then against Jerusalem. And it focuses in on Jerusalem. If we want to really study correctly, we'd read the whole thing again in English, but I'm not going to do that right now. So, because I want to move on to Numbers. Okay, any questions, any comments? Oh, the stone edition is hideous. Don't use it. Throw it in the garbage. Flush it down the toilet with your dead fish. It's horrible. I mean, the stone edition is outright rabbinical propaganda. I think Robert Alter's the best. I would just get Robert Alter's book and use that. You can use the NIV. There is some Christian propaganda embedded into the NIV, but I find it to be overall a pretty good translation. I like the NIV. I think, honestly, of the of the modern translations. Robert Alter is probably the best. That's why I use him. You also have the Shokin Bible. Everett Fox is also very good. It's free online. If you send me a message, I can even just send you the PDF. Also an excellent translation. But please, not the Stone edition. No, God, no. That's the one we use here. This is Robert Alter right here, the one that you see that I'll now put on the screen. This is Robert Alter. Okay. Let me go to the front page so you can see. Oops. Okay. He's great. He's really good. Excellent. Honestly, it's the best modern translation out there. Okay. So we're going to go into, God, it's getting late, but that's okay. We're going to go into Numbers. I think I'm not going to take a break. I'll take a break. I'll put in one song. And so I can rest my vocal cords for a second. And we'll be back in just a couple minutes. And then we'll go into Numbers chapter 2.
Alta, alta es la luna cuando empieza a esclarecer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Mis ojos se hincharon de tanto mirar la mar. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Dos taras tiene con él, la una que arrolla dados, la otra que echa sheshbesh. La una que arrolla dados, la otra que echa sheshbesh. Mi querido es alto y vano y una vara de expander. Mi madre hizo cola, lo metió a detener. Mi madre hizo cola,
Okay, we are back. So let me just set this up correctly. All right, we're back. We're going to dig in now into Numbers chapter 2. Let me just mention that for about a year and a half or something, about a year and a half, I've been doing I do a 60-hour fast from midnight Saturday until Tuesday noon, approximately. I don't count the hours. Sometimes start a little bit earlier, a little bit later. Sometimes end a little bit earlier, later. And I do this for physical, mental, and spiritual reasons. And if anybody, so I drink water, coffee, and tea, and that's it. That's the only thing that goes into my system during those 60 hours. And if anybody would ever like to join me, then let me know. And you don't have to do the whole thing. You can do part thereof. But it really is life-changing. I do this every week. I've been doing this every week now for about a year and a half. And then approximately 4 times a year, I try to do an extended fast. So I do approximately a 9-day fast. This last time I lasted 8 days instead of 9 because it was so damn hot outside. It was like 95 to 100 degrees every day. It was just wearing on me. So I did an 8-day instead of a 9-day. But if anybody would like to join me in doing this, it really has incredible physical, mental, and spiritual benefits. I know probably some of you out there are familiar with intermittent fasting or even prolonged fasting, and it really makes a huge difference. I always say that I look as forward to my 2 days of not eating as I do to my 5 days of eating each week. The body really needs a break, and that's the way I do it. And if anybody wants to join me, just text me privately, and you're welcome to join me and give each other a bit of moral support and texting back and forth and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so let's dig into Numbers chapter 2. And let me show the screen. Okay, so we'll just read through. We're in verse 16. Right, let's confirm that. Yes, we're in Numbers 2:16. So let's read through in the English up to 16, and we'll switch over to the Hebrew. So Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, the Israelites are to camp around the tent of meeting, some distance from it, each of them under their standard and holding the banners of their family. So basically, this is it. This is the image is worth 1,000 words. And this is what we're going to be describing, okay? In Numbers 2 and 3. Okay, on the east towards the sunrise, the divisions of the camp of Judah are to encamp. Let me just, hold on one second. Let me just. Okay. So on the east towards the sunrise, and remember we said that let's just get a little bit of a layout here. The entrance to the tabernacle is from east, in the east side. So the entrance is guarded on the east. That's the most important. That's really the most important side. It's like guarding the entrance to the White House, something like that. So the top guards, or the most important guards, are going to be placed in the front entrance, right? Of course, you're going to have guards all around the White House, but the elite guards will be placed by the front entrance. And that's what we have here. So as you enter into the tabernacle, by the way, the red rectangle represents the courtyard with the fence around it that's described in detail in Exodus. Then the yellow rectangle represents on the right side the holy area, and then the little yellow square is the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant is. So when you enter, you go from east to west, you go away from the rising sun. And so the elite warriors are going to be guarding the east. And we'll see a lot of interesting things in the setup. Okay, I would say that the second most important is the back, the rear guard. Okay, because if enemies are going to approach, and remember, this whole camp, the language used here, both when we saw it in Numbers 1 and here in Numbers 2, is the language of military, of an army. This is an army moving through the desert. And had to be careful also of enemies, but moved like an army. And at the center of this army is the tabernacle, the Mishkan, of course, the center of the center being the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant is, where the tablets of the Ten Commandments are placed inside that ark. And where the glory of God, Kavod Yahweh, is spoken about in the end of the book of Exodus, descends on between the cherubim on the cover of the ark. At any rate, we're going to see that we'll talk about it. All right. Let me read on. Okay, the leader of the people of Judah is Nachshon ben Aminadav. His division numbers 74,600. The tribe of Issachar will camp next to them. The leader of the people of Issachar is Nethanel, son of Tzoar. His division number is 54,400. And we don't have to read through each one. Zvulun, and that's called the Camp of Yehuda, Machane Yehuda. Also the name of the famous Shuk, the famous outdoor marketplace in Jerusalem, Machane Yehuda. But this is what we're talking about. So this is the camp of Judah. And notice we have Judah, followed by Issachar and Zvulun. So this is the head of the camp of Judah, Yehuda. Then Issachar second, Zvulun is third. If we go to our chart here, okay, here is the camp of Judah. Notice that all three of these, okay, Yehuda, Issachar, and Zvulun, these are sons of Leah. Judah, we know, is the essentially the firstborn of Leah, not physically, or the firstborn of Jacob, not physically. It's complicated. But Reuven, Shimon, and Levi got the boot. And number 4 is Yehuda. So he, in a sense, is the firstborn of Jacob, kind of. But the real firstborn of Jacob is Joseph. And Ephraim, who is the secondborn of Joseph, who becomes the firstborn, really becomes the firstborn of Jacob. So Ephraim really, honestly, has the rights of the firstborn among all of Jacob's children/grandchildren. But Judah also has a very important role because of the sons of Leah. He is essentially considered the firstborn because, again, if you look at the blessing in the end of the book of Genesis, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are given the boot. Reuven for sleeping with Bilhah, sleeping with Jacob's concubine, and Shimon and Levi for their actions in Shechem when they killed off all of the city of Shechem. And number 4 is Yehuda, and that's why he has such an important role. Of course, David and the line of David come from patrilineally from Judah. Okay, so this is extremely important. This eastern guard, okay, camp of Judah, and all three are sons of Leah. Okay, Leah's fourth son, Leah's ninth son, and Leah's 10th son. Okay, then we get to the southern side, and there we have Ruvain. So this is Machane Ruvain, the camp of Ruvain. Ruvain is Jacob's, physically, his firstborn. Okay, and again, let's look at our diagram here. So I would claim that these are the north and the south are the less important guards, the less important sides. So we do have Ruvain, and by the way, it goes from Ruvain, Shimon, and Gad in this direction. Okay, so we're going counterclockwise. I'm sorry, we're going clockwise. Okay, so Ruvain is the firstborn, the physical firstborn of Jacob, and the firstborn of Leah, their first child. He lost the right of the firstborn. Okay, but and it's the same with Shimon, and then Gad is the son of Zilpah. Zilpah was Leah's concubine. I always get the two mixed up. I better look it up before I say something stupid. Hold on a second. Yes, Leah's concubine. Okay, so that's the camp of Ruvain. Okay, so the first and second born of Leah, and where's the third born? Not here at all. Not in this list anyway, because the third born of Jacob and Leah, or of Jacob and Leah, was Levi. And Levi is not in this list. Levi is going to be in the inner circle, right? And we'll get to that in the next chapter. Here's Levi, broken up into clans: Merari, Gershon, Kohat, and then we have Moses and the Kohanim guarding the eastern wing, eastern flank. So at that point, we're out of sons of Leah. Okay, for the southern side. So Leah had 5 sons in order. Six sons, because we said Levi is not listed. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, not listed here. And then Yehuda, and then eventually Yisachar and Zvulun. So that exhausts all of Leah's children by the time we get over here. Okay. And so then we have Gad, who's the son of Leah's concubine, two sons of Leah's concubine, the one with Asher, who ends up here. Okay. So this is clearly based on the hierarchy. This is the I would say the third most important flank, because Reuven is indeed the firstborn of Jacob, Shimon the secondborn of Jacob. But when compared to, and I always say in the Torah, everyone knows their name, rank, and serial number. It's sad to think, in a certain sense, that Jacob had favorites, but he kind of did. He had a rank order. And at the top of the rank was Joseph. There's no doubt about it. That was his favorite son. And after that, the second one, who was considered the firstborn, the secondary firstborn, was Judah. Okay, let's go on. So we can skip ahead. Shimon, Gad, and then the camp of Reuven, 155, 450, and I think we have all these numbers tallied here. All right, so we add this up, so 46 and 59, so 46, 545, so 45 and 46 is 91. So then we get 90, 150, and another 60 is what did we say? 92, 150, and 60 is going to be 152, 150 minus 700, 151, 150 plus 300, 151, 450 is what it should add up to. And indeed it does, 151, 450. So just cross-checking that. Okay, so now we're in verse 17. Actually, we didn't read 16 in Hebrew. Wait, why do I have this in English? Let's get the Hebrew for this. So 16, we never read in Hebrew, so I'll just read it in Hebrew now. כל הפיקודים למחנה ראובן 151,450 לצבאותם ושניים ייסעו. They shall travel second. Right? So the camp of Judah travels first. Go back to our spreadsheet. So let's see, how can we denote that? Let's say camp position. We'll just add this. So Yehuda is 1-on-1. This is going to be 1-on-2. And this is going to be 1-on-3. This is going to be 2-on-1. Two on two, and 2-on-3. Okay, very good. So this brings us now to verse 17. And we just get a quick statement here. So we נסע אוהל מועד מחנה הלוויים בתוך המחנות כאשר יחנו כן ייסעו איש על ידו להם. So the tent of meeting, tabernacle basically, and which is the camp of the Levites, מחנה הלוויים בתוך המחנות, shall travel. So the tent of meeting, which is the camp of the Levites, shall travel in the midst or in the middle of the camps. כאשר יחנו כן ייסעו. Just as they camp, so they shall travel. Ish al yado ledir lehem. Each person al yado. So according to his position, maybe. See how Robert Alter deals with that one. Okay, each in his own place by their banners. So basically what this verse is saying is that when the camps travel, first Judah is going to set out, then Reuven is going to set out, and then the Levites are going to set out. Okay, carrying the tabernacle, right? Dismantling and then carrying the tabernacle. So they're in the middle, right? They're protected. Just as when they camp, they're protected by the outer ring, and then the tabernacle is protected by the Levites. We'll get to the Levites in the next chapter, but in the meantime, now we go to the next camp, the outer concentric circle, and that's the camp of Ephraim. So Degel Machane Ephraim Letzivotam Yama. So the banner of the camp of Ephraim, according to their armies, to the west, or on the west, right? So now we're talking about the camp of Ephraim. Again, notice we're going clockwise here. So here's Ephraim. So I would claim, so this really gives us a lot of insight into the way that Yahweh perceived his nation, okay? So why was the kingship given to Judah and not to Ephraim? And it was not given to Ephraim. Yes, the northern kingdom broke off. We spoke about earlier, Yerovam ben Nabat, first king of the northern kingdom. But the vision, right, the eternal kingship is given to David, who's of the tribe of Judah, not to Ephraim. So the kingship is really with Judah, but shall we say the spiritual inheritance really goes through Joseph, as represented by Ephraim, who was given the right of the firstborn when Jacob in Genesis, I think it's 48 or 49, I think it's 49 actually, crossed his hands and made the younger the firstborn, and the older Manasseh that lost the right of the firstborn. Okay, so Ephraim, we could say, is more like the spiritual heir. I don't like to use the word spiritual. More like the firstborn overall of Jacob, but Judah represents the force, the physical, the kingship of Jacob. So Judah is doing the, when it comes to army stuff, when it comes to actual physical rule, like a king, then Judah's the one. That's why Judah is guarding the entrance on the outer concentric circle. But second most important is the rear guard, and that's Ephraim. So by seeing the importance of the children, we know which flank is most important. And sorry to say, but the least important flank is the north. Okay, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So if we look it up here, so here's Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Okay, they're all sons of concubines. So we'll get to that. Okay, but the point is that even though the true duty of guarding the tabernacle falls to Judah, in the camp of Judah, the rear flank, which is the second most important, falls to Ephraim. And we know it's the second most important because it's given to Ephraim. That's how we know. And Ephraim is the highest ranking child after Judah, who represents the kingship, or the physical force, the physical manifestation of power of Israel. Okay, and I'm not being mystical about that. It's not some kind of mystical kind of statement. That's pshat. That's straight out of the Tanakh. You can see this in the text, the way the blessings are given to the children, the way the roles that are given to the children, the hierarchy, and so on and so forth. Hold on, I'm just going to lower the AC. Because if misunderstood, that could sound like some kind of mystical statement. Oh, it's not mysticism at all. This is straight out of the text of the Tanakh. Okay. So we Nasi Livnei Ephraim, Elishamah ben Amihud. So the head, the chief of the children of Ephraim is Elishamah ben Amihud. Okay. So let's get him. Grab his name. Elishamah ben Amihud. It's Ephraim. Let's change this to Ben instead of. And let's just confirm that this is the same one that we saw in Numbers 1. So I'll bring up Numbers 1 as well. So for Ephraim, Elishama, son of Amihud. So he's the same one as mentioned in as the helper for the census in chapter 1. Let's give the camp of Ephraim a color. I know, some kind of green. Let's give them like a light green. That works. Lighter. That works. And this is the camp of Ephraim. All right. Their camp to the west. This is camp 3, position 1. And Ephraim is, I put him as 11 because Ephraim and Manasseh are the sons of Joseph, who is the 11th son of Jacob. Okay. וצבאו ופקודיהם 40,500. So 45,500. Second here. Oops, I'm sorry, 40,500. And that checks out with what we saw in numbers 1. Right, so we're just getting a recount. Numbers 1 gives these numbers already. So we'll just confirm. Right, so 40,500. So it's just repeated in numbers 2. Allow, and next to him, the camp of Manasseh. Manasseh is Joseph's, physically his firstborn, but demoted to secondborn. Manasseh livnei Manasseh, and the head of the chief of the sons of Manasseh, Gamliel ben Pedatzur. Let's confirm that from numbers 1. So it's the same one, Gamliel ben Pedatzur. I think they're all. I think there was one that might be different, but I might be wrong. But let's just grab Gamliel. So this is Manasseh. Okay, same as in chapter 1. Ephraim, west, 3 on 2. And he gets a light green. Okay. And then we get a count. It's about 32,200. That checks out. Ephraim we noted was, Manasseh we noted was the son or the tribe with the lowest number of people, but that makes sense because again, Ephraim and Manasseh were split into 2. So if we add Ephraim and Manasseh together, then it's 72,700, which is almost as much as Yehuda, which is the tribe with the highest number of people. Okay. Matei Binyamin. Unasi livnei Binyamin Avidan ben Gidoni. So now we get to the tribe of Benjamin. Same guy. So we can fill that all in. Okay. completes our tribe of Ephraim. Oops. Okay, and notice interestingly once again that Benjamin is actually in the kind of protected position, right? He's the baby of the family. And so he's in the rear, but he's third in the rear, right? So if they're going to attack in the center probably, right? They're not going to attack up in this corner. So Benjamin the baby is kind of, we could say, actually probably one of the most protected positions in the camp. Sadly enough, of course, the entire tribe of Benjamin is almost wiped out, leaving only 600, and that's in the end of the book of Judges. But that's a story for another time. Okay, verse 23. 35,400. Let's just confirm that. That's correct. Okay. Let's move on. By the way, how many verses? Okay, we can finish off, I think. Probably, even though it's getting quite late. So כל הפקודים למחנה אפרים 108,100 וצבאותם ושלישים יישאו. So all of the count for the camp of Ephraim is 108,100. 108,100. Let's just confirm that checks out. 108,100. So we got 40, 32, 72, 107. And then 107, 900, 108, 100 is correct. Okay. So that checks out. Verse 25. And then finally we have Degen Mahane Dan, Sephona, Tzivotam. So the camp of the banner of the camp of Dan in the north, by their armies. V'nasi livnei Dan Achiezer ben Ami Shaddai. So now we have the three concubines, the three sons of concubines in the north. So this is arguably the least important flank. So our helper for Dan, Achiezer ben Ami Shaddai. That checks out. We have him. Okay, same. North. This is camp 4, position 1, and this is the camp of Dan. Dan. Let's give that a color. How about a nice purplish kind of thing? A little richer purple. That works. Yeah, that's right. Okay, and that's getting a purple. Verse 26. Let me get the count. צבאו ופיקודיהם 62,700. 62,700. Just confirm that it's the same number. Oh, I already have it on a spreadsheet. What am I doing? It's done. 62,700 is correct. Verse 27. Ahonim alau. Matei Asher, and camping next to him is the tribe of Asher. Nasi livnei Asher, the head of the tribe of Asher, Pa'iel ben Achron. Pa'iel ben Achron. same. Camp of Dan. North. Fourth camp, second position. Okay. צבאו ופיקודיהם 41,500, 41,500. Check. And then Mate Naphtali, the tribe of Naphtali, ונשיא לבני נפתלי אחירה ben Ainan. And checks out. So all of the leaders check out the same as chapter 1. So we can just erase this column here. They're all the same. Okay, and let's just maybe add some color in here. Let's shoot down on the yellow. This one's 4 up on the blue. This one's 1 down on the green. And this one's 1 down on the purple. Oh, there we go. Okay. Actually, might as well even extend that out. So once again, we got 2 under the main yellow. This is 4 up on the blue. This is 1 down on the green. And this 1 down on the purple. Okay. Alrighty. צבאו ופיקודיהם 53,400, 53,400. Check. And then we get a total count for the tribe of for the camp of Dan. 57,600 לאחרונה ייסעו לדגליהם. So altogether, we have 57,600, and they travel last with their banner. So they're bringing up the rear. $57,600. Let's just check that. Wait. I'm sorry. I missed the part. כל הפיקודים למחנה דן 100,000 ו-75,600. 157,600, 157,600. And I'm sure that's up. Yeah, 6 carry the 1, so 63, and 41 is 104. 154, 157, 600 is correct. Okay, and then we can finish off chapter 2. And then we'll point out some interesting things. So these are the counts, the census of the children of Israel according to their fathers' houses. Here we go. We spoke about patrilineal descent. This phrase, father's houses, is used often. The rabbis say that your tribe is determined by the father, but whether you're a Jew or not is determined by the mother. And then I always say, ask a rabbinite, what if a Kohen has what if a Kohen marries a non-Jewish woman and then has a son? Is the son a Kohen or a non-Jew? Now the rabbis will answer it's a non-Jew, but it makes them think, because the only place that this idea that the rabbis hold that the tribe goes by the father, the only relevance it has in this day and age for them is with a Kohen, because the Kohen still has a special place in the synagogue. They give the blessing, even though they don't really give the blessing, because they give the blessing in the name of Adonai. That's the blessing of number 666. We'll get to that soon. The official Kohanic blessing. They give it in the name of Adonai rather than Yahweh, so they're actually not blessing the children of Israel at all, because you're supposed to bless according to the name of Yahweh, not Adonai. But nonetheless, in the rabbinical world and in the rabbinical synagogue, the Kohen still is determined by the father, since that's a tribe or a clan, sons of Aaron. And so it makes them at least think, what if the father is a Kohen and the mother is someone from China, Chinese Goy in their language? Then is that a Kohen or is that a non-Jew? Well, they'll say it's a non-Jew because it goes by the mother, but it does make them think, hey, it doesn't make sense. The father's a Kohen. We know that if the father's a Kohen and the son's a Kohen, it at least raises their thoughts slightly, which is very hard when you're ensconced in a cult. It's very hard to think independently or think at all for that matter, but it does make them, it kind of like does, it's cause a little bit of cognitive dissonance. At any rate, so kol pikudei hamachaneh, hamachanot letzivotam, we get a count again, 603,550, 603,550, right? And there's our total in Numbers 146, and also, so let's just put this down again, and 232. Okay. Alrighty. 33. The Levites were not counted among the children of Israel. We'll get to them in the next chapter. As Yahweh commanded Moses. Where did he command Moses? In Numbers chapter 1. Let's find that. Numbers chapter 1, verse 47, the ancestral tribe of the Levites, however, was not counted along with the others. The Lord had said to Moses, you must not count the tribe of Levi or include them in the census of the other Israelites. Okay. The Levites are always a little bit different, right? Verse 34. I could go on an anti-rabbinical polemic here and say, this must be a reference to the oral law, as Yahweh commanded and told Moses. It doesn't say it here. So reference to the oral law, just like Deuteronomy 12:21. We're not going to go there right now. But the answer would be the same. Verse 34, and the children of Israel did everything according to what Yahweh commanded Moses. And I'll just point out that this is a very common phrase throughout Leviticus 17, starting in Leviticus 17 through at the end of the holiness code, the quote-unquote holiness code, which I won't get into the whole details of it. But of course, I don't believe in the documentary hypothesis, but the idea of the holiness code comes from the documentary hypothesis. Sometimes it's called even the H source, but I don't believe in that at all. If you know what it is, you know. If you don't, then don't worry about it. But nonetheless, it does, the analysis of the documentary hypothesis does point out some patterns. So it can be good observations, but poor conclusions. And so this pattern here of this phrase, the children of Israel did according to all of that Yahweh commanded Moses, is why some secular scholars say that the holiness code continues into the book of Numbers. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. It's not important, and I reject the whole idea of the documentary hypothesis, but you can learn from it in the sense that those who support the documentary hypothesis, such as one of my favorite lecturers, even though I disagree with him, Joel Baden from Yale University. He is kind of trying to renew or update the documentary hypothesis. Look him up on YouTube. He's a very good lecturer, even though I disagree with a lot of what he says, but he really is knowledgeable in the Tanakh, I will tell you that. Ken hanu l'diglehem, so they camped according to their banners. And so they traveled, each one according to his clan, al beit avotav, and his father's house, or his clan, which was part of the house of his fathers. Again, we have this phrase, house of his fathers. Okay, so let's sum up, and then we'll end. Wow, it's late, but that's fine. Everyone's partial to Benjamin because he's the baby of the family. Right? You can't not like Benjamin, although he almost got wiped out in the end of the book of Judges. Okay, so let's think about this. So here's the pattern when they're resting. What about when they're marching in the desert? Let's see if we can get an image of that. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so let's think about it here. Well, this also involves the Levite. So we'll save this until after we're done with chapter 3. I think it'll be more meaningful then. Okay. So we're going to sum up here. Okay, we finished Numbers chapter 2. Next time we'll go into Numbers chapter 3. And we will talk about the Levites and their positions around the camp. And so we'll pick that up next time. Any questions, any comments before we close up? I hope you enjoyed the study. I think it's a much more interesting way to study this stuff, putting together a spreadsheet, rather than the way it's done, let's say, in the synagogue, where it's just read out loud and everyone is just falling asleep because it's so boring. It's just a list of numbers and nobody really does anything with it, right? You really got to analyze this stuff and pick it apart. And you can't do it in a 10-minute Devar Torah while you're shoving wine down your face and you have a glass of wine in one hand and a greasy potato kugel in the other hand that goes all over your tzitzit and onto your sandals, and then you're picking greasy potato kugel out between your toes, and like in the rabbinical synagogues I see. Right? You really got to sit down. You really got to pick apart the numbers and the structure and see what's going on. So with that being said, do we have any questions or comments before we finish up? Isaiah 43 is obviously meant to rabbinical synagogues. I don't even now I've been banned from the rabbinical synagogue, which is actually as I've mentioned, thank God, you know. But I wouldn't even eat the kiddush because it's like, you know, it's like you have to fight. First of all, I don't like eating standing up. And anyway, usually afterwards I'd have a big lunch. So I didn't want to pig out twice, you know. I don't pig out ever really. Well, sometimes I do, but rarely. But if you have a whole kiddush and then you go to someone's house for lunch or you make your own lunch at home, then you're having these two huge meals. And I just don't want to fight, you know, over herring and potato kugel, you know, with everyone else, and then walk around with like balancing food on my plate and wine and whiskey in the other hand and get it's no thank you. Anyway, so I never really partook in the kiddushes anyway, but a friend of mine used to call it, you know, grazing time at the trough, you know, you know, and it got nasty. Like if there was only like I don't know, let's say what was a big winner there. Let's say I don't know, potato kugel or something like that. You know, you'd practically be stabbing each other in the ribs to get to the potato kugel when it was close to running out. Anyway, whatever. So we're going to end with that. I thank you all for joining me. And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov, wherever you are in the world. Again, please donate. There's your QR code up in the upper left. And let me put up the QR code for joining the World Alliance of Qara'im. I really would like to say to each one personally who attends these studies on a weekly basis, I'm asking you, please, if you have not joined the World Alliance of Qara'im, then please do so. It's not a huge amount that we're requesting each month, and these are used for very important projects that we're working on. Okay? I can't force you to. I mean, I could put the study behind the paywall, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. But please, some of you who have been here and you know who you are week after week, if you're not supporting us financially, then please do. You should be. It's only fair. Okay. So that's that. We're going to end with this. I thank you all for joining me. This is Hakham Melech Rahmiel ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And once again, wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov with the help of Yahweh, Bezrat Yahweh. We will see you all again next week on Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov. And as always, we'll go out with some music. Just give me a second to set that all up.
Many nights we've prayed with no proof anyone could hear. In our hearts a hopeful song we barely understood. Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is rare, it's hard to cure. Who knows what miracles you can achieve? When you believe, somehow you will. You will when you believe. This time of fear, when prayer so often proved in vain, hope seemed like a summer bird too swiftly flown away. Yet now I'm standing here with heart so full I can't explain, speaking faith and speaking words I never thought I'd say. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is rare, it's hard to cure. Who knows what miracles you can achieve? When you believe, somehow you will. You know when you believe. Ashira Adonai